Masechet Baba Mitzia Daf Kof Zayin Nu Mishnah Hamkabel Sadeh Mechavero LeZor'a Seorim Lo Yizra'ena Chitim Chitim Yizra'ena Seorim Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Oser. As someone receives a field as a tenant farmer and the owner says, I want you to plant barley on it. He may not plant wheat, but if the deal was that he should plant wheat, then the tenant can decide to plant barley. The reason is because wheat weakens the field more than barley, and therefore, if they agreed with barley, that means the owner does not want his land to be weakened very much, and so he cannot go to wheat. But if he agreed to wheat, which does weaken the land, then all the more so the owner would be okay with just barley. In any case, since it's a tenant farmer, the owner is going to get the same thing. All right, if he said plant wheat, then probably the tenant farmer said, I'm going to pay you 10 quart of wheat. So even if he plants barley, the owner would be happy. He gets the 10 quart of wheat anyway. The tenant farmer will have to come up with that somehow, and his land is not being weakened so much, so that you can go that way. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, however, says no, it's prohibited. You have to follow the deal exactly as you said. The Gemara will explain why. Tebu'a lo yizra'enna kitnit. Kitnit yizra'enna tebu'a. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel oser. Similarly, if they agree that he's going to plant grain, then he cannot plant beans, because beans take more out of the ground than wheat, and weakening the ground. But if the deal was that he's going to plant beans, then he can plant grain, because grain is better on the ground. And again, since he's a tenant farmer, the owner is going to get the same thing. Note that this is only true for a tenant farmer. For a sharecropper, we saw before that even if it takes more out of the ground, but it yields something that's more expensive, the owner will be happy. So if it's a sharecropper, then he is allowed to even weaken the ground if it will produce something better. As we said before, an owner doesn't want to weaken himself, is okay with weakening the ground, right, if he can get more money up front. But in this case also, Rashbag says it's prohibited. Amar Rav Chisda, my Tamad Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rav Chisda asked, what is the source for Rashbag to say that you cannot change either way? Tichtib she'erit Yisrael lo ya'asu avla v'lo yidaberu chazab v'lo yimaseh befihem lashon tarmid. Because the pasuk in Sefanya says, the remnant of Israel do not do iniquity, they do not speak lies, and nor shall deceitful tongue be found in their mouth. And therefore, you shouldn't lie. Even if you're planting something that is better for the ground, right? You agreed on wheat, and now you're only planting barley. So it's not hurting the ground more, it's hurting the ground less. Nevertheless, you agreed, right? You're going to plant barley, and the tenant farmer says, yes, I'm going to plant barley. Then you should be truthful and just stick to your word exactly as you said when you made the deal. Me'tibeh. Now we have a challenge against Rashbag. Migbat purim lepurim ve'en medaktekin v'dabar ve'en ani rashad likach mehen resuah lesandalo elem ken hitna b'mamad anshe ha'ir divrei Rabbi Yaakov shamar mishum Rabbi Meir. So anything that you collect, charity money that you collect for Purim, you have to use for Purim. You can't use it for something else. But you don't have to be so specific about the matter. You don't have to scrutinize it. Anybody that comes and says, listen, I need money for a meal on Purim, we give it to them, and you don't have to say, well, exactly what are you going to eat? How much is your meal? Is it $10? Is it $10.50? Right? You could give them generously, and you don't have to be so exacting, right? Because we want people to enjoy Purim. Now, that's the responsibility of the people giving out the money. The responsibility of the poor person is that he has to use it also for the purpose that was intended and go and enjoy a nice Purim meal with it. He cannot use that money to buy, for example, a strap for his sandal. The sandal broke and needs a new strap. Okay, he should get that fixed, and hopefully the community will provide him money for that. But this money is earmarked and shouldn't be used for anything else unless there was a stipulation in the presence of or the representatives of the community, and they said, yes, you can use it for however you want, right? Otherwise, he has to use it for the specified reason. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. However, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel mekel. He says it's permitted. He thinks that the donors are not going to be so particular. They're going to be like, okay, we donated for Seudat Purim, but if you go in and ask them, would you mind if you use it to fix something small, like his sandal strap? They would be fine with it. And therefore Rashbag says it's okay, you can deviate. So now we have a contradiction, because Rashbag over here says you cannot deviate, even if it would be for the owner's benefit. Still, you have to say the truth exactly and do exactly as you agreed. Whereas Rashbag over here says that the poor person can deviate from the agreement because we assume that they would agree, but he's not doing exactly as he said. Amar Abayet, Amad Rabban Shimon Kedemor, Tamar Mor, Haiman Denichale de Titbor Ar'e, Lizra'a, Shata Chite, Veshata Sare, Shata Sheti, Veshata Areb. Abaye said, the reason of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is not what we just said, that you cannot deviate. He can deviate, as we see in the example of Purim. You can use the money for something else if we assume that everybody would agree. Here too, if it's good for the owner, then you can deviate. That's not the problem. The problem is something else, is that it's actually not going to be good for the owner. Even if they agreed the owner agreed to wheat, and then he planted barley, and you say, well, that weakens the land less. Yeah, Tanakama says it always weakens the land less. But Abaye says, I learned from my master, that's Rabbah, his teacher, that if someone wants to keep their field good, like as if you left it fallow from between plantings. If you leave it fallow for a year, then it regains its strength, its nutrients, and that's good for the ground. If you want to do that, even without leaving it fallow, so you know what you should do? You should keep switching plants, crop rotation, and plant wheat one year and barley the next year and then wheat again, or plant it one time lengthwise and another time crosswise, keep changing it up. And therefore, if the owner said, I want you to plant wheat, and you go plant barley, it could be because the year before he planted barley, and now he wants to switch it to wheat. If you do barley, then that will weaken the land. It will deplete of those nutrients that go into the barley. So therefore, he said wheat, he meant he really wants wheat, and wheat would be better for the land, so that it would be rotating, and not to have two barleys in a row. And that's why Rashbag says that you have to do it. You have to do exactly as the owner said. By the way, a side point is that this you only have to worry about this if you plow just once and you didn't plow again. But if you plow and plow again, then you don't have to worry about that, because that moves around the dirt a lot, and then it's like new. Okay, that's a side point. So apparently, according to Tanakama, they don't know or don't agree with this advice, and they think that barley is always better than wheat, and therefore the tenant farmer can change in a way that would be better for the land. Tebu'a lo yizra'ena kitnit. Now the other example was that if they agreed on grain, the tenant cannot then plant legumes and beans. Matne le Rav Yehuda le Ravin. Tebu'a yizra'ena kitnit. Rav Yehuda asks Ravin, I have a baraita that says the opposite of what the Mishnah said, that if they agreed to on grain, then the tenant can put beans into the ground. Amale v'ha'anan tenan tebu'a lo yizra'ena kitnit. Amale la kashya halan v'ha'lehu. So Rav Yehuda told Ravin this baraita. Ravin said, hold on, but we have a Mishnah that says the other way around. And Rav Yehuda answered, no, there's no problem. One halacha is for us and one is for them. Meaning, for us in Bavel, Rav Yehuda and Ravin, whenever you see Rav, without not Rabbi, Rav means they're from Bavel. So Rav Yehuda says, the halacha for us is this baraita that I quoted you, that even if they agreed on grain, you can put beans. Because in Bavel, Israel, there's a lot of rivers and the land is very rich, and therefore it's not a problem. The land is not going to be depleted. Even if you put beans, you can the land will be just fine. As opposed to Eretz Israel, where the original Mishnah was from. There in Eretz Israel, the land does not does not get irrigated naturally from big rivers, but it depends on rain. There's not so much rain, and therefore, if you put beans, will be depleted, and then you cannot do that if they agreed only on grain. Amar le Rav Yehuda le Rabin bar Rav Nachman. This is, by the way, a very important source because it shows that there is he was quoting a baraita, and so this shows that there are baraitot that are based in Bavel, right? There are Babylonian baraitot, even though all the Tanaim that we know of are from Eretz Israel, and the entire Mishnah is from Eretz Israel. There are some sages that moved from Bavel to Eretz Israel that we know about, but they're active in Eretz Israel. But from here, we see that there were baraitot that were formulated in Bavel and transmitted in Bavel, because this baraita, according to this Gemara, only makes sense actually in Bavel and is the opposite of the version in Eretz Israel. So there are local versions of baraitot. Okay. Amar le Rav Yehuda Rabin Rav Nachman Rabin Achi Hane Tachle Debechi Tana En Behem Mishum Gezel Omdot Al Gebulin Yesh Behem Mishum Gezel. Rav Yehuda said to Ravin, the son of Rav Nachman, Ravin, my brother, I have a halacha for you. When you see a cress growing among flax and someone comes and takes the cress, they're not stealing. Why? Because the cress among the flax is a weed. The cress is less valuable than flax, and it's just weakening the flax. So therefore, if you take that cress is delicious. You can put it in your salad. So if you go and take it, you're actually doing the owner a favor by helping him weed his garden. However, that's only if it's growing in the middle where the flax is. However, cress that's on the sides, on the boundary, that it is considered stealing, because that's not where the flax is growing, and the cress by itself is valuable, so you cannot take it. And if it's already late in the season, so that the cress plants hardened with seed, then even that which is among the flax, that's considered stealing. Why? Because it already caused the loss to the flax by growing there. Now it's already done growing. It's not going to take away any more from the flax. So since the damage is already done, my seed means, right, damage is already done. Now the owner says, I want that cress. And so therefore you cannot take it at that point. Amar le Rav Yehuda Rabin bar Rav Nachman Rabin Achi. We have a series of statements that Rav Yehuda told Rabin, and he says, Rabin, my brother, Hani dili dilach v'dilach dili nehog b'nei Misra ilan anotel lechan lechan v'anotel lechan lechan. He says, these produce of these the trees that are mine, the produce is yours, and the trees that are yours, the produce is mine, because this is the law of people that are neighbors. So here's the deal. You have trees along a border line, and there's apparent that the trees on one side, their roots are going into the other, onto the other field, whereas the trees on the other field, those roots are going the other way into this field. And therefore, the produce should belong to the person, not where the top of the tree is, the trunk of the tree is growing up, but rather where the roots are getting their sustenance from. And therefore, wherever the roots are, that person should get it. So since they were neighbors, so they understood that this is the deal. If a tree tilts this way, that means the roots also are going that way to hold it up. And if the field is tilting the other way, then obviously the roots are also going that way, and that's how you can tell who the produce belongs to. T'itmad, ilan omed al mesad, amar Rav noten lechan lechan, vanoten lechan lechan, ushmal amar holkin. As we say that if you have a tree that's on the border, Rav says if it's tilting to that field, then that owner of that field gets it. If it's tilting towards this field, then the owner of this field gets it. Shmuel disagrees with Rav, and he says, no, you just split the produce, because it's part of it is on this side, part of it is on that side. The roots are in here. The trunk is here. The branches are some here, some there, and so therefore you should split it. Metibe hilan haomed al mesar yachloku tiyubta derav. We have a challenge against Rav from a baraita that says if you have a tree that's on the border, then you should split it. That supports Shemuel. And the answer is to the Gemara Shemuel aliba derav bimale kol mesar kulo. Here, amazingly, Shemuel comes to the rescue of Rav. See, Shemuel could have said, "See, Rav, you're wrong," but he doesn't want to do that. Shemuel's helping Rav out and explaining this baraita. Not only, of course, it supports him, but Shmuel says, I can explain it for my colleague Rav, that the Baraita is talking about a case where the entire boundary is filled with trees. There's trees all over the place, and therefore it's evident that some are going this way and some are going that way, and therefore you should just split it. However, it's just one tree or a couple of trees, and you can see that the roots are all going to one side. That's where Rav was saying that you see if it goes on this side, then that's who gets the produce. Now we ask, if in fact it's talking about a boundary that's full of trees going both ways, then isn't this obvious? Oh, we need it for a case where the bows are hanging more towards one side, and you might think, well, since it's more on my side, I should get more of it. No, you just split it. But that's also obvious. No, it's still teaching us that you might have said that one of them could say, let's divide like this, you see, because these bows are over my land and that part is not. And so then the other could say, well, how do you know that you're dividing in this way based on the fruit and where it is on top? Maybe you have to go by the roots and where they are on the bottom, and therefore, since you can't tell exactly if 51% this way or that way, it's appropriate to just split it. Amar le Rav Yehuda le Ravin bar Rav Nachman, Ravin achi lates ben ara desmicha lemata. Tamar Rabbi Abu Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, asur lo le'adam she'amod al sedeh chavero b'sh'a she'omedet bekamoteha. So Rav Yehuda again says to Ravin, my brother Ravin, here's an important halacha. Do not buy land that is right near the town. Why? Because they said in the name of Rav that a person is not permitted to stand on the border of his friend's field when the field has all standing grain. Now, it's not nice to go and ogle at someone else's success. It's bad in both ways. The commentaries say this is ayin hara. How do you understand ayin hara? You could understand it magically, that by looking at something it causes a curse on it. It could be understood more physiologically, according to the way they understood eyesight back then, is that the eye actually emits some kind of light that bounces off the item. And since something comes out of the eye, if someone is looking at something with in a jealous way or a negative way, it can actually cause it harm. So either it's some kind of magical thing or a natural thing, or you can explain it simply psychologically, that by standing in front of someone's field, so he's being jealous, and it's not good to be jealous. It's also not good to be the victim of jealousy, and therefore it's not good to show off. It makes other people feel bad, and then they will end up not liking you very much. It could draw attention, draw someone to come and steal what you have, or to compete, or just not treat you well. So therefore, it's never a good idea to show off and arouse jealousy. It's also not good to be jealous. Okay, so we can understand this in any of those ways, and therefore it's not good to buy a field right next to the city. Now, people will generally live in the city, and then they would commute out to the field. So if it's right outside of the city, then that's very good. Less commuting time, you can have more time for work. But nevertheless, this is negative. Get something that's not too far, but not right from the city where everybody can see it. Now we have a challenge against the Rav. Ini veha ashkachinu Rabbi Abba letalmidei de Rav. Amar lehu mai amar Rav behane kera'eh Baruch atah ba'ir Baruch atah b'sadeh Baruch atah b'wecha Baruch atah b'setecha. Rabbi Abba found the students of Rav and he asked the students, what did Rav say about this pasuk? Beautiful pasuk from the blessings in Devarim. Blessed are you in the city, blessed are you in the field, blessed when you come in, blessed when you go out. Peshat of coming in and going out might be about war, or any time going in, going out from work. Amru lehachi amarav, and the student said, this is how Rav explained it to us. Baruch atah ba'ir sheyeh betecha samuch lebet haKnesset. Blessed you are in the city, that wherever you live in the city, you should be close to the synagogue. That way you can go. You wake up in the morning and you're right there, and it's easy to go to synagogue. Baruch atah basadeh shiu nechasecha kerobim la'ir. You should be blessed in the city. That means that your property should be near the city. That way you don't have a long commute. Baruch atah beboecha she'lo timsa ishtecha safek nida b'shat bi'atecha min haderech. Blessed are you when you come in, meaning that after you go on a trip and you come back home, that you should be blessed that you don't find your wife safek nida. If she's not nida at all, that's the best. You come on a long trip and you miss her, and then they can be together. That's good. Second best is if she's for sure nida, then okay, well, she says off times, so he knows off times, what can you do? The worst is actually if she's safek. I saw something, I wasn't sure, is it blood, is it not, I don't know, and then that really bothers him because he has to keep away because safek, but he really feels maybe it's not a safek, maybe it's okay, and so maybe he should do it. So he keeps thinking about, should I, shouldn't I, what should I do? He feels bad about it. So that's the worst of all situations. Baruch atah b'setecha shiu se'esa'eh me'ayecha kemotcha. Blessed are when you come out, and that means the offspring that come from your loins, they should be like you. Beautiful blessing, as Rav explains each of these phrases. V'amar lehu Rabbi Yochanan lo amar hachi. So notice it says here that the field should be close by to the city. So this is the opposite of what Rav said before. Okay, before we answer that, we're going to finish off the conversation. Rabbi Abba said to these students of Rav, listen, I heard from Rabbi Yochanan a different interpretation. He said, Ela baruch atah ba'ir she'eh bet hakiseh samuch l'shulchanecha. Blessed are you in the city. That's not referring to Bet Knesset, but rather referring to the outhouse. They didn't have plumbing and bathrooms in their homes. So if you live near the outhouse or whatever field where they would relieve themselves, if you live far away, then this is not good. You're going to have to hold it in or go all the way there. That's very bad. So it's good, it's healthier if it's not too far away. Aval bet haknesset lo. But he didn't say that about being next to a Bet Knesset, because Rabbi Yochanan says actually the opposite. You get reward for every step you take. So if you live far from a Bet Knesset, and you still wake up and you go and you walk a mile, 2 miles, then you get better reward. If you live right next door to the Bet Knesset, then you get less reward. So he had a different understanding there. Baruch atah basadeh shu nechasecha meshulashin shlish b'tbuah shlish bezetim shlish begefanim. He had a different understanding of this also. The field, that didn't mean that you should be close to the field, but rather you should have a diversified portfolio, and you should invest in a third grain, a third olives, and a third grapes. You never know. One year this one doesn't do well, the other two will do well. You should hedge your investment. Baruch atah beboecha, baruch atah b'setecha she'yisitcha min ha'olam kebiatcha la'olam ma biatcha la'olam belo chet af yisitcha min ha'olam belo chet. And blessed are you when you come in, when you go out. That means the going out from this world should be like you're coming into this world. Just like when someone is born and come into the world, they have no sin. So too when someone dies, they should remain without sin. Okay, anyway, we have nice two interpretations, but back to our question, how could Rab first say that it's best to have a field close to a city because it'll arouse jealousy, and then he says it's good to be close to the city so that you can have a short commute. La kashya hademadar le shura veritka hadela mehadar le shura veritka. there's no difficulty. The second statement where he said it's good to have a field close to the city, that's where he has a wall and a partition surrounding it, so that even if it's right on the border of the city, no one can see the standing grain. But the earlier statement that said that there's ayin hara, people will be looking at, it's not good to look at someone's field, so therefore it's not good to have a field that's close to the city. That's where there is no wall and partition surrounding it, and so it's not good to be showing off all your grain and gains right in front of everybody. Now that we mentioned the beginning of that pasuk, the blessing in Devarim, we're going to continue and expound more on the further blessings that Hashem will take away all sickness. Amarav zo ayin. Rav, continuing with the theme before, says this is talking about ayin hara. That is sickness. Most problems are caused by showing off and jealousy. Rav leta'amed, Rav salik lebek kibre. Abad mai abad abad. Amar tisha v'tisha be'ayin hara ve'achad b'derech eres. And Rav is consistent with his opinion because he went to the cemetery and he did whatever he did. We're not explaining what he did. Some kind of, maybe he said some kind of incantation to see what was going on there. Who are these people that died and why did they die, right? Because of what sin? And after investigating the many graves, he came to the conclusion that 99% of people die because of ayin ra'ah. They are jealous of people, or they cause jealousy to others by showing off. And only one by natural means, right? Sometimes people do just die a natural death. That happens. But most of the time people bring stress and suffering upon themselves. Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim also says that the number one cause for suffering is the suffering that people bring upon themselves because they're always comparing themselves to their neighbors and not being happy with what they have. Ushmuel Amar Ze Haruach. But other opinions say, what is Kol Choli? What is the major cause of disease? Shmuel himself was a doctor, and he says it's because of wind. Shmuel Tamed Amar Shmuel Hakol Beruach, and it's consistent with what he says, that everything is based on wind. He may be referring to airborne bacteria, airborne viruses. In fact, most diseases are caused by that. The Gemara elsewhere says that if there's a plague in the town, that you should go indoors and seal up your windows, which means that they did seem to know that major plagues, which would probably be the causes of most diseases or colds and things like that, were in fact airborne. Now we ask, hold on, aren't the people that are killed by the government, they get capital punishment, or they're tortured and injured and they die from their injuries? And we answer, no, these people also, if not for the wind, then you can bring medicine and make them better. And so this is also true, that when someone has an injury, they're more likely to die from an infection that enters into it, not from the injury itself, which can heal. If a wound can heal, but the bacteria in the air, if it's not treated properly, or the bacteria on the other tools will go in, and those will finish off the person. Rabbi Chanina Amar, Zo Sina Damar Rabbi Chanina, Hakol Bidei Shamayim, Chutz mi sinim pachim shenemar, sinim pachim bederech ikesh, shomer nafsho yirchak mehem. Rabbi Chanina says, I have a different opinion, that all sickness refers to cold air. That's what makes people get cold and flus. As Rabbi Chanina is consistent, because he says everything is in the hands of heaven except for cold. Pach might be traps, right? Cold entrapments, cold things, or cold and heat. As the pasuk says in Mishle, sinim pachim, right? Cold and heat, or cold entrapments, are on the path of the perverse person, but someone who guards himself from him will do well. So you see that it's cold. This is an amazing statement. Right? Everything's in the hands of heaven. If someone's going to be well or sick or live or die, everything's in the hands of heaven, unless you go out in the cold without a coat, and then you're causing disease upon yourself. So then don't blame Hashem if you don't take care of yourself. Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina Amar, Zo So'a Amar Mor, So'at HaChotem v'So'at HaOzen, Ruban Kasher Mi'otan Yafeh. Rabbi Yosef, the son of Hanina, says that all sickness refers to excrement, because he said that that which comes out of the nose, meaning mucus, and that which comes out of the ear, earwax, if it's a lot, it's not good. If it's a little, it is good. As we see today, if someone has an infection, then they have a lot of mucus and earwax, that's not good. But you need some in order to be healthy. Rabbi Elazar Amar Zo Mara. Rabbi Elazar says all sickness refers to gallbladder. Machala Zo Mara. Baraita says the same thing. Why do you call disease just, the disease or all disease? Why is that associated with the gallbladder? Because that makes a whole person's body sick. תלויים במראה וכולם פת שחרית במלח וכותון של מים מבטלתן. Another interpretation is that it's called machala because there are 83 different diseases that depend on the gallbladder, and for all of them, as long as you have some bread and salt in the morning with a big jug of water, then you'll have no problem. It will negate all of their bad effects. It's important to have a good breakfast. And now we're going to talk about the importance of having some bread and salt and water, and to have a good breakfast. Braita says there are 13 matters that we learn that are positive effects of having bread in the morning. Maselet min hachama u'min asina. It protects someone from heat and cold. Min azikin mazikin machkimat peti. Uvezoke badin vilmod Torah lamed. Udvarav nishma'in v'talmudo mitkayem beyado. It saves from wind, from bad spirits. It makes a simple person wise, and it makes you victorious in judgment. That's because if you have energy, so a good breakfast in the morning, you'll be able to go and learn. You'll be able to go to court and plead on your behalf. You'll be able to learn Torah, you'll be able to teach Torah, because you have that extra energy in the morning. And when you say something, people will listen and pay attention, and you will hold on to your Torah because you'll be concentrating while you're learning. And also, will cause him to not generate too much sweat. And since he will have strength in the morning, he will be able to engage well with his wife, have relations with his wife, and because he does that, he will not look to or desire other women. And so, look what great benefits. Furthermore, it's good for his digestion, and it will kill any lice or parasites that are in his intestines. And some say it will also remove jealousy and bring in love. Because when you go around and you're hungry, you're always like, I want that guy's food, I want that, and you're jealous of everybody. But if you're satiated, then you're not jealous of anybody, and then you can be happy for people. And so you see the great importance of having your Wheaties in the morning. Amar le Rabba le Rava bar Mari menaha mileta da'ameri inashe shitin rehite rehut vela matu legabra demisafera kerach ve'amru Rabbanan ashkem ve'echol b'kayitz mipnei hachama u'b'choref mipnei hasina. Rabbah asked Rava bar Mari, what's the source of the folk saying that people say that if you have 60 runners running, they cannot catch up with the person who ate a good breakfast in the morning, right? This is really the breakfast of champions, right? The champion runners cannot keep up with someone who has a good breakfast. And the rabbis said, based on that you should wake up early and eat in the summer because it's going to get hot. In the winter, winter because it's going to get cold. And as we said before, eating breakfast in the morning saves one from both the heat and the cold. What's the source? I know this is a popular saying, but how do you know this from the Tanakh? Amar dichtib, lo yirabu v'lo yisma'u v'lo yakim sharav hashamesh. Lo yakim sharav hashamesh, kevan de lo yirabu v'lo yisma'u. Pasuk says, they shall not hunger or thirst, neither shall the heat nor sun smite them. The heat and sun will not smite them. Why? Because they are not hungry and not thirsty, because they got up early and ate a good breakfast. Amar le'at amat li mehatam v'ana min alach mehacha. So Rava said, oh, you told me from there. Rabbah said, you told me from that pasuk. I have a different pasuk. Sometimes you ask a question just because you also have an answer. So you want to hear the other person's answer so you can offer your own. So here's my pasuk. Va'abadetem et Adonai Elohechem uberach et lachmecha ve'et memecha. Va'abadetem et Hashem Elokechem zo kiryat shema u'tfilah. Uberach et lachmecha ve'et memecha zo pat bemelach v'kiton shamayim. Mikan va'elach Hasiroti machala mikirbecha, pasuk in Shemot, that you should serve God, Hashem your God, and He will bless your bread and your water. So you should serve God. This is talking about saying Shema and Tefillah, praying. And Hashem will bless your bread and water. This is referring to bread and a jug of water, and then that's the great blessing. After that, then Vasiroti machala, the continuation of the pasuk is then you will have no sickness. So as long as you go in that order, you should pray first. You have to pray before you eat. So pray first, then eat a good breakfast, and then you'll be good and healthy. Amzal le Rav Yehuda le Rav Ada meshoha'a la tezalzel b'mishhata techol purta purta hazeh lechur kema rishka. Amar le Rav Yehuda le Rav Ada meshoha'a 400 anigra zalzel behu v'de'anhara la timshachanhu kelal. So Rav Yehuda has said to Rav Ada, the surveyor, he says, take your job very seriously. Do not be light in measuring, even in small areas, because every little bit of someone's field is useful. And who knows, an extra inch, you could plant a saffron plant there. And the saffron is a very expensive plant. Here it is saffron. And therefore, when you're measuring out people's lands and saying, here, your border is up to here, if you are off even by a little bit, you're cheating them a lot. So be very careful. It's a very important job. And Rav Yehuda said to Rav Ada, also said to same person, also said to him that the 4 amot that are near a channel, that you don't have to worry about. You don't have to measure the 4 amot so carefully, because this is a semi-public area near the channel. All the people that live next to the channel, they can use that. And so therefore, you leave some room there. And if it's next to a river, don't bother measuring it at all, because that's a public area. We're going to see in a second that this area is used when you have to pull boats along the river. I mean, you're going downstream, it's fine, but if you're going upstream or there's not enough of a current, then you have the people would be standing on the sides of the river when holding on to ropes and pulling it, and so they need space on the sides, on the banks of the river, in order to go and pull the boats. Rav Yehuda is consistent because he says the 4 amot that are on the channel belong to the residents along the channel, and the 4 amot next to a river belong to everybody, and therefore you don't measure them precisely to say, oh, you have all the way up until the river. No, don't measure that part at all. Machriz Rabbi Ameh melo kitfe nagade bitre bere nahara kosu. Rabbi Ameh would make an announcement that people should cut down the trees on the banks of the river. How much? The shoulder width of the pullers. They need space that they can pull these ropes and not have trees in the way. And therefore, they need some space there, and you can cut down everything, any trees that grow there. Rav Natan bar Hoshaya kas shitzad amata. Rav Natan, the son of Hoshaya, he had people cut down 16 amot of the bank of the river. That's quite a lot. Atu ale b'nei Mashroniya dafnuhu. The people of Mashrona came and they started beating him up. maybe dafnu like dofen. They start banging him against the wall, saying, "What are you doing? You're cutting down all our trees, all the way 16 amot. Why so much?" Hu savar kishut rabim. Now he thought that it belongs to the public, and therefore it has to be the space of reshut rabim, of a public thoroughfare, a main thoroughfare through a city that is typically 16 amot wide, because you have a lot of people that are traveling there and their animals, and so you need that width. That's what he thought. Velahi hatam bainan kolehai hacham mishum amtuche eshlehenhu kimlo katfe nagade sage. However, that is not the case over there. If you're talking about a public thoroughfare, then yes, you need 16 amot. But here, it's not that there's so much traffic going back and forth, but rather you just need the space of the stretching of the ropes that people are pulling, and therefore all you need is the width of the shoulders of the pullers, so to cut down so that they don't have any obstacles in their way. We next have two stories about this halacha. Rabba bar Rav Huna havale hahu iba aguda de nahara. Rabba, son of Rav Huna, had a forest on the bank of the river, and the trees went all the way up right to the river. Amru le nikos mor. And so people said, "Master, you should cut down your trees so that the pullers of the boats can walk." Amalu kosu ila evetate v'hadan nikos ana. And Rabba bar Rav Huna said, "Let the people upstream and downstream from my property first cut their trees, and then I'll cut my trees. What's the point of only cutting my trees if all the other trees are still there, so they still won't be able to walk, so why should I be the first?" Hechi abid hachi, ha'ketiv itkoshishu v'koshu, havamadesh lakish keshot atzmecha, v'achar kach keshot acherim. And now we ask, how could a great sage like Rabba bar Rav Huna do such a thing? After all, the pasuk in Sefanya says, "Gather yourselves and then gather others." As Shakish explained, first adorn yourself and then adorn others. First make sure that you don't have any blemishes, and then you can go and ask others to do so. But you should be the first to do the right thing. So Rabba bar Rav Huna, you take care of your forest, and then, lead by example, and then others will cut down theirs as well, and everything will be good. And the answer is, Hatam ibad debe parzak rufi lahava, amar ikaisu kayasna, ve'ila kaisu amai ekus. This was talking about a case where the adjoining forest was owned by Parzak, the Persian general. And so Rabbah said to himself, if the Persian officials cut them down, then I'll cut them down also. But if they don't, then why should I cut them down? Dimam teche lehu ashlayahu mistage lehu. Because if the pullers are able to stretch their ropes and pull alongside the river, then good. If we all cut it down. V'ila la mistagi lehu. But if they can't get by the Persian general's forest, then they're not going to be able to pull along that side anyway. They're going to have to pull it along the other side. And therefore, since it's unlikely that they're going to cut it down, who's going to go and tell the Persian general, "Hey, we want you to cut down your trees"? He's not going to listen to anybody. So therefore, since he's never going to cut them down, I'm not going to cut them down either. But if you're talking about regular people where you can come together and come to an agreement and convince them, then yes, you should lead by example. Another similar story. Rabba bar Rav Nachman hava ka'azil be'arba chaza hu iba teka'e aguda de nahara. Amar lehu deman amru le Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rabba, the son of Rav Nachman, he was going in a boat and he saw that there was a forest right on the river bank. And he said, "Who owns this forest? Why aren't they keeping the halacha? They should be cutting it." And they told him, "This forest belongs to Rabba bar Rav Huna." And Rabba, the son of Rav Nachman, said, "Amar v'yad hasarim v'haseganim haya b'ma'al hazeh rishona. Amar lehu kosu." And so Rabba, the son of Rav Nachman, applied the pasuk in Ezra that the hand of the princes and the rulers were the first in this faithlessness. In other words, Rabba bar Rav Huna, He should be a leader. He should be doing the halacha first, doing it right. And I can't believe that he didn't cut down his trees next to the river. And so Rabbah, the Rav Nachman on the boat, commands people, go and cut down those trees. And he does it even without permission. Ata Rabbah bar Rav Huna ashkeche de kayis. So then Rabbah bar Rav Huna comes back home and he sees someone cut down his trees. Amar man kaiseh tekos anfe. Now he didn't know who did this, who said that, who authorized this. So he just gave a general curse and he said, whoever cut down my trees, his branches should be cut down, meaning he shouldn't have children. Amri kulehu shenet Rabbah bar Rav Huna la ikayam le zar'a Rabbah bar Rav Nachman. And that curse took effect, and all the years that Rabbah bar Rav Huna was alive, the children of Rabbah bar Rav Nachman did not survive, and that was a sad consequence. So I guess this teaches the importance of making sure to do the right thing and not being even under any suspicion of doing anything wrong by others who might be passing by. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.